Georgia recently passed a voter reform bill. I'm sure many of you have heard about this. It takes many of the temporary provisions from the pandemic, like early voting and mail-in voting, and it makes them permanent, though it does kind of pull back on them a little bit. Early voting time is reduced. Vote by mail, you'll need your ID. It does seem to be, for the most part, a compromise between Democrats and Republicans. Now, if you listen to only mainstream or Democrat news sources, they'll tell you that it's voter restrictions, Republicans are trying to cheat, and that you can't give people water if they're waiting in line. Okay, these things are opinion. Some of them are kind of extreme. My understanding, you can give people water and food. You just can't campaign while doing it. Well, because of these restrictions, many major corporations announced that they are furious with Georgia. In fact, some are even saying they plan on leaving. Major League Baseball, for instance. Now, this may be a get woke, go broke type situation, but it's a really weird one because the people going broke are the black residents of Cobb County, it's a blue county in Georgia that is going to be losing, I think, like nearly $100 million. We'll go through the numbers. But with Major League Baseball pulling out of this All-Star game, a lot of tourism dollars and a lot of money that would go to marginalized communities is being pulled out. But here's the best part. They're moving to Colorado, which has almost the exact same laws already. So I wonder, is this actually a get woke situation? Or is Major League Baseball using this as a pretext to break contracts and move to a more favorable location that they think might make them more money? Think about this before we read into this. A lot of businesses have morality clauses. So when you're doing a contract with, let's say you're hiring somebody, you want a personality, you want an actor, and you say, I would like to have you act on my show. Well, most contracts have a morality clause saying that if you violate, public decency or offend people, we can terminate the contract. So what do? I'm not saying this is true of Major League Baseball in Georgia, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a long-term contract that Major League Baseball had with Georgia for these stadiums. They would need to, and that it had some kind of morality clause that if something was done by the Georgia government that was offensive and could harm the business, they could pull out. Oh heavens! Oh, the voting laws! Oh, we're so angry and offended. Now we have to move to a majority white area. I wonder what their real motivations are. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you what they're thinking because I can't read their minds, but here's what they said, and here's what's happening. In a release from April 2nd, Major League Baseball statement regarding the 2021 All-Star Game. Commissioner of Baseball Robert D. Manfred Jr. issued the following statement today regarding the 2021 All-Star Game. Over the last week, we've engaged in thoughtful conversation with clubs, former and current players, the Players Association, the Players Alliance, among others, to listen to their views. I've decided the best way to demonstrate our values as a sport is by relocating this year's All-Star Game and MLB Draft. Major League Baseball fundamentally supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box. In 2020, MLB became the first professional sports league to join the Nonpartisan Civic Alliance to help build a future in which everyone participates in shaping the United States. We proudly used our platform to encourage baseball fans and communities throughout our country to perform their civic duty and actively participate in the voting process. Fair access to voting continues to have our game's unwavering support. We will continue with our plans to celebrate the memory of Hank Aaron during the season's All-Star festivities. In addition, MLB's planned investments to support local communities in Atlanta. As part of our All-Star Legacy projects will move forward, we are finalizing a new host city, and details about the events will be announced shortly. In response, Georgia's Governor Kemp and State House Speaker Ralston responded to MLB's decision to withdraw the All-Star Game from Atlanta after passage of the new elections law, saying, "Today, Major League Baseball caved to fear, political opportunism, and liberal lies," said Governor Kemp. "Georgians and all Americans should fully understand what the MLB's knee-jerk decision means. Cancel culture and woke political activists are coming for every aspect of your life, sports included. If the left doesn't agree with you, facts and the truth do not matter." I will stop and say this. I read CNN breaking down what the Georgia vote reform bill did on this channel, and it is very much a compromise. Oh, they get voter ID, but they've also extended early voting and mail-in voting. You see, what they did was a big ask. The pandemic hits, and they say, we need all of these things. And everybody agrees. Well, we're in a pandemic, so let's do extended early voting. Let's do mail-in voting. And we did, among other things. And then we decided that once the pandemic is over, okay, well, now these things go away, right? No, Georgia said we're going to keep some of them, which is a huge gain for Democrats in terms of what they wanted for voting. And it acts as though the pandemic is not a factor. No. These things were temporary. We all agreed to change the rules temporarily. Now, Georgia's agreeing to keep some of these in a limited fashion, which is a gain for Democrats. They're acting like they're being slighted. You see what they did? Big ask. Hey, you give me $1 million for that car. Whoa, $1 million is too much. Okay, fine. How about $500,000? Now that sounds more reasonable. Give me half off. The big ask is when you ask for something that is way more than you actually want. So when you walk it back, it sounds reasonable. The Democrats got that. They're going to say, quote, "This is an attack on our state. This attack on our state is a direct result of repeated lies from Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams about a bill that expands access to the ballot box and ensures the integrity of our elections." I'm sorry, I got to say, I agree with that statement. Giving more early voting and mail-in voting options, that's more than we had before the pandemic. It does expand. It doesn't give the Democrats everything they want, though, so they're acting like they're being slighted. He says, "I will not back down. Georgians will not be bullied. We will continue to stand up for secure, accessible, fair elections." Earlier today, I spoke with the leadership of the Atlanta Braves, who informed me they do not support the MLB's decision. Stacey Abrams' leftist lies have stolen the All-Star game from Georgia, said Speaker David Ralston. This decision is not only economically harmful, it also robs Georgians of a special celebration of our national pastime free of politics. But Georgia will not be bullied by socialists and their sympathizers. We will continue to stand for accessible, secure elections that are free and fair. And we will continue to speak truth despite extortion and intimidation. All right. Well, first, before we get into the get woke, go broke kind of stuff, let's talk about what they're actually doing and why what they're saying makes no sense. From the Daily Caller, MLB All-Star Game reportedly moved to Colorado, a state with voter ID laws similar to Georgia. The Daily Caller reports, Major League Baseball is reportedly moving the All-Star Game to Colorado, a state that has similar voting ID laws to Georgia. ESPN reported that the MLB moved the All-Star Game to Coors Field in Denver, Colorado, after Major League Baseball ditched Georgia over a series of new voting laws. But Colorado's election laws aren't all that different from Georgia's. One main point of contention for some is that Georgia voters will be deprived of water, food, and other items while standing in line. But Georgia's law simply mandates that volunteers can't hand out water, food, or other items. The law, however, explicitly states that voters can still have access to water and polling places by having self-service water stations available. Basically, what Georgia wants to do is stop people from showing up, giving out water and saying, vote for my person. Vote for this person, vote for that person. Self-service stations will be available. And I'm sure if you're waiting in line, you're like, hey, I'm going to go grab a water. They'll be like, all right, I got you. And you're fine. No one's going to be like, no, you're out of line. You lose your spot. You grab your water. It's fine. They say under Colorado law, campaign workers are allowed outside of polling places to offer water, snacks, and other items to voters who are waiting to vote. Campaign workers, however, are not allowed to offer the aforementioned items if they wear apparel or bear any of the candidate's image, political party, or ballot measures within 100 feet. Like Georgia's new set of election laws, Colorado also requires voters present identification for both in-person and absentee voting, the same as Georgia. All voters who vote at the polls must provide ID, Colorado law states. If you're voting by mail for the first time, you may also need to provide a photocopy of your ID when you return your mail ballot. Acceptable forms of ID include a Colorado's driver's license, a passport, a military ID, a copy of your birth certificate for the elector, or a valid student ID with a picture, among other options. And student IDs aren't that hard to get. I mean, it's not like a student ID is comparable in many circumstances to a legitimate government ID. Georgia residents will also have to show ID just like the Colorado voters. Georgia residents can receive a free ID card from the state, which can be obtained simply by getting the appropriate documentation. Voters who choose to vote absentee will be required to submit an ID as well, just like Colorado voters. At least 35 states require this. Okay, all right, you get it. Hypocrisy at its finest. I'm going to throw it out there again. I wonder if this is something to do with they saw an opportunity to make more money and they're like, hey, whoa, morality clause. I don't know they actually have that, but it's something I think people should consider when they see stories like this. When some woke actor is like, oh, no, I can't do this movie. Maybe they didn't want to do it in the first place. Well, I'd imagine if they signed on for it, they probably did. But maybe things have changed and, they didn't want to. Let's say there's a movie that's cast an actor and they know it's an exorbitant fee and they're thinking like, man, can we get out of this contract? We're not, it is. Oh no. Oh, the actor was seen. Oh, they were watching a documentary about Jordan Peterson. Oof, we condemn bigotry. So we're going to have to terminate that contract. So who gets hurt by Major League Baseball and these companies deciding to leave? It's quite simple. Black-owned businesses bound to take major hit from Biden's support of MLB's Georgia boycott. That's right. Georgia has a large black population. When the riots erupted and people were going around smashing up businesses, they were smashing up many black-owned businesses. There was this famous rapper. I think it was Big Mike. I'm not sure. He was like, why are you coming here and smashing up black-owned businesses in the name of Black Lives Matter? Yeah. Why is Major League Baseball saying, the people who run the state have passed a bad law. Let's make everyone else suffer. Yeah, well, here you go. The Daily Caller reports. MLB's decision to move the 2021 All-Star Game out of Atlanta in response to Georgia's voter integrity law could greatly cost the city's black-owned businesses, numerous sources report. The estimated lost economic impact Georgia will face without the Major League Baseball game is more than $100 million. Holly Quinlan, President and CEO of Cobb Travel and Tourism, told CNN on Friday. $100 million. For what? For what? Seriously. This law isn't that crazy. It's similar to many other states. Yeah. Major League Baseball saw an opportunity. They took it. I can't imagine they would make a move like this if it would substantially hurt them. I'm willing to bet that they moved to Colorado because Colorado was like, how much does it cost for you to be in Georgia? Think about it this way. Let's say they have a deal with, Georgia, with the city or the county or whatever. And it's like the county says, you want to use the stadium, it's going to cost you $10 million, something like that. Let's say then Colorado's like, we want $100 million in economic impact. So how about we just charge you $5 million? We'll eat some of the costs because the economic boom to our city will be worth it. And then, Major League Baseball says, but we can't move because we have a contract with them. And then their lawyer's like, actually, we have this morality clause thing. I'm not saying that's legitimately what happened. I'm just speculating. I'm telling you these things may happen in some circumstances. I don't see Major League Baseball losing money for no reason. That makes no sense to me. They had a choice. No one called on them to ban the state. No one called on them to leave and change the state, as far as I know. And my understanding is that even the leftists in Georgia are like, don't leave. Like, we're mad about this too, but don't hurt us. Now, I think MLB saw an opportunity to make money. That's my opinion. Black-owned businesses in Atlanta could acutely feel the revenue loss. Nearly 30% of Atlanta's businesses are black-owned, landing at the 5th place spot on Career Resource website, overheard on conference calls ranking the best cities for black-owned businesses in 2021. Savannah, where 23 of businesses are black-owned, was the 20th best city in the ranking, Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported in February. MLB intended to play the exhibition game at the Atlanta Braves' Truist Park, but moved location due to the new voter laws, which are aimed to curb alleged voter fraud. Among other things, the laws require voters to provide a photo ID when they submit an absentee ballot. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you one of the greatest exchanges we've seen so far on Twitter. First, we have this tweet from Steven Eisenberg, who said, Delta and American, if I ever fly with you again, I will not show ID. Why? Well, I know Delta issued this statement. I'm assuming this is because American Airlines also issued a similar statement saying these laws are racist and we denounce them. American Air verified Twitter account responded, adults 18 and over are required to show identification at the airport. Well, isn't that something? Really? They're not required to show ID to vote? Well, I tweeted, I am told this is racist. Yes, we've all been told it's racist. We've been told over and over again that it's racist to require IDs. It's the stupidest thing ever. And it's only these uninitiated liberals, well-to-do, who don't pay attention, who fall for this stuff. You mean to tell me that these liberals think people in the black community haven't gone to see an R-rated movie before? You need an ID for that. They don't buy alcohol. You need an ID for that. Regular people do regular people things. How stupid and racist. It's remarkable to me. Who believes this stuff? Well, if we require people to have an ID to vote, that would be racist. You saying these people don't have jobs? You need an ID to get a job. You need an ID for basically everything. And apparently some of these states issue IDs for free. But apparently among the progressive left and the liberal establishment left, no, they think that the poor minorities just aren't smart enough, I guess, or don't know where the DMV is. You really got to watch that Ami Horowitz thing. It's a classic. It's a classic video. He goes to Berkeley and he asks Berkeley students, white progressives, what they think about voter ID laws. They're like, oh, they're racist. And they say things like how they think black people, in their opinion, don't know how to find the DMV or whatever. My favorite interaction, my favorite so much, is Ami then goes to like Harlem or the Bronx and he goes up to black people. My favorite interaction, he goes, do you know where the DMV is? And the guy goes, oh yeah, it's over on 25th Street. Like as if he was just helping the guy with directions, not realizing the political ramifications of what the video was about. You see Ami go to this neighborhood and these people are confused when they hear what he's saying. He's like, do you have an ID? And they're like, yeah, I got a driver's license. Do you have the internet? They're like, yeah. One kid's like, even a 12-year-old kid's got the internet. What are you talking about? Like, it's amazing that people really believe this. How is that? If you want to fly in an airplane, you need an ID, okay? If you want to leave the country, you need a passport. That's an annoying thing to get, right? Yet for some reason, they say this stuff and people just eat it up. It's some of the stupidest. It's just, some people are just stupid. I don't know what to tell you, man. CEOs condemn Georgia voter ID law while their own companies require valid photo ID, which brings us to the sheer racism of CocaCola. That's right. CocaCola is a white supremacist organization. That's another thing I noticed too. Like, why do people say white supremacist instead of white supremacist? And I don't know, whatever. Bill Maher said white supremacist recently on his show. And I'm like, is that a different thing? And you hear it from a lot of the Black Lives Matter people. They don't say white supremacist. They say white supremacist. I guess. I don't know. White supremacist probably makes more sense. Supremacy. I don't know, whatever. Coca-Cola. I'm going to outright say it. It has long been known that voter ID is racist. So saith the Democrats. And Coca-Cola requires ID to come to their meetings. That's my understanding, which proves that Coca-Cola is literally a white supremacist organization. Okay. Just the news reports. Leaders of major corporations have come out swinging against Georgia's election reform. Democratic messaging against the law centers around the allegedly racially discriminatory implications of requiring valid voter ID in order to vote by mail. Joe Biden blasted the law as an atrocity, likening it to Jim Crow in the 21st century. 72 black executives, meanwhile, signed an open letter calling on their corporate brethren to stand up to the Georgia voting laws un-American. Are they going to write a letter about Colorado or the 35 states, the 34 other states, I guess, where you need an ID to vote? It's just ridiculous nonsense. But in an echo of the politicians who got caught flouting their own COVID mitigation restrictions, several of the same corporate giants embraced the Democrats' heated partisan rhetoric, alleging voter suppression themselves require ID to access their services. On March 11th, Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta Airlines, dedicated a building at the company's Atlanta headquarters to Andrew Young, the former Democratic mayor of the city, Carter administration U.S. ambassador to the UN, and civil rights leader. At the dedication ceremony, Young addressed the election reform bill, then making its way through the Georgia State House and Senate. And Young's daughter, Andrea, approached Bastian to emphasize how important it was to oppose the law. Last week, after being lobbied, former CEO of American Express, Kenneth Chenault, one of the signers of the open letter, Bastian sent a memo to Delta employees alleging that the GOP voting laws are a Republican attempt to make it harder for many underrepresented voters to exercise their constitutional right to elect their representatives. But if you want to hop a Delta flight to Atlanta or anywhere else, you'll need an ID. Coca-Cola CEO James Quincy told CNBC that the new law is unacceptable. However, Coca-Cola requires a valid photo ID for admission to its annual shareholders meeting last year. We will verify your registration and request to see your admission ticket in a valid form of photo identification, such as a driver's license or passport, said the company in reference to its early 2020 annual meeting of shareholders. And let's not forget the good old vaccine passports, the epitome of white supremacy. That's right. Because in order to get the vaccine passport certified, you need to get a vaccine. In order to get a vaccine, you need to prove your identification. In order to prove your identification, you probably got to go to the DMV and provide some specific resources, which means it is in many ways easier to get your ID than it is to get the vaccine because the vaccine requires ID. So it's an extra step. There you go. So it's double racist. The vaccine passport requires all of these things. And if they want to come out and say that poor people or that certain racial minorities don't have the ability to do these things, that's racist. How about at the same time that they're claiming this, they're also talking about giving out vaccines based on race. They genuinely are racist people. It's not, you know, it's not surprising to anybody, but the left is in this country. I believe that they have been racist for a long time. And I wonder what really happened with the parties switching, so they say. I don't think they did. I know a lot of people say this. They switched in some capacities, but they switched on actually, I don't even know if that's true at all. Their strategy just changed. And anybody who is discerning and looks at the policies they implement, they're not helping minorities. They're not at all. Opposing these laws, it's an attack at election integrity. Everybody can get an ID. We need to have some security in our elections, not none. I think people should have an ID to vote. And I don't think it's racist. Why? Because I grew up in a mixed race neighborhood. We had, people of all different types in the south side of Chicago. Everybody had an ID. It wasn't a complicated thing to get. You come to me and tell me that me and my non-white friends wouldn't be able to do it. I'm going to call you a racist and a white supremacist because you certainly think that you're better than everyone else. I think not requiring ID is racist because it takes away security from our elections while also telling racial minorities that they're too stupid to figure out how to do it. And that's not true. They certainly know how to do it. They function like regular people. But these well-to-do progressive types, these Berkeley kids, are overtly racist. So there you go, man. MLB didn't necessarily get broke on this one. They're probably going to make money. The people of Atlanta, the people of Savannah, they're going to lose tons of money. So I'll tell you this. For all the people in Georgia who are complaining about this and all the woke, they're hurting themselves to insult Republicans. How dumb. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.